Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into something really crucial for succeeding today. Managing yourself. The whole idea that a company plans your career, that's pretty much gone.
It really is. We're all basically the CEOs of our own careers now.
Right. And that's the focus today. We're digging into Peter Drucker's Managing Oneself, the mission.
To help you, the listener, really get a handle on your strengths, how you work best, your values.
And ultimately, where you can make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Because the opportunities now are huge, aren't they?
Unprecedented, really. If you're ambitious and smart, your starting point matters less than ever. But there's a flip side.
Responsibility.
Exactly. You have the freedom, but you also have the responsibility to understand yourself and, steer the ship.
Okay, so let's dive in. This self-knowledge, where do we start? Drucker says it's about strengths, but not just guessing at them.
Right. He argues we're often surprisingly bad at knowing our own strengths. We think we know.
But we might be wrong. So how do we find out for real?
Feedback analysis. That's his core method. And honestly, it's the only way he believes truly works.
Feedback analysis. Okay, how does that work in practice?
It's actually quite straightforward. Whenever you make a key decision or take a significant action, you write down what you expect the outcome to be.
Okay, write it down.
Then, maybe 9 months, maybe a year later, you go back and compare the actual results to your expectations.
So you're creating a record, like a personal performance review almost.
Kind of, yeah. But it's forward-looking first, then reflective. You're looking for patterns over time.
Patterns like?
What? Well, what results do you consistently generate? Where are you effective? But also, where do your expectations consistently miss the mark?
Okay, so it shows you what you're good at.
And maybe what you think you're good at, but the results don't quite back it up. It also reveals skills you might need to pick up.
Interesting. And Drucker's main point here isn't just fixing weaknesses, is it?
No, not at all. That's the crucial insight. It's about identifying your strengths and then concentrating on them. Build on what you do well.
Don't just try to become mediocre at things you're bad at.
Exactly. He argues it takes far, far more energy to go from incompetent to mediocre than from good to excellent. Pour your energy into your strengths.
Which, as you said, we didn't always have the luxury of doing. Historically.
Historically, your path was largely set. Baker's son became a baker, farmer's son a farmer. Knowing your unique strengths wasn't really necessary.
But now, with so many choices.
It's essential. You need that self-knowledge to find your niche. And it's not a totally new idea either.
Okay.
Drucker found examples going way back.
Oh yeah, like who?
He mentions a 14th century German theologian, John Calvin, Ignatius of Loyola. They used similar reflective practices.
For building their organizations.
Yes, he suggests it was key to the long-term success of the Calvinist Church and the Jesuit order. They built on understanding people's capabilities.
Wow. Did Drucker use it himself? Find anything surprising?
He did. He realized through this process that he had a really strong intuitive understanding of technical people, more so than he'd consciously thought.
Huh. And anything else?
He also noted he didn't connect quite as well with generalists, which for someone like Drucker was kind of a surprise even to himself.
So beyond strengths, what else does feedback analysis tell you?
It tells you where to improve your strengths, what skills or knowledge you need to add. It can also expose intellectual arrogance.
Intellectual arrogance. What does he mean by that?
Basically, dismissing knowledge outside your own field. Thinking your area is the only one that matters. It's incredibly limiting.
And dangerous in an organization, I bet.
Absolutely. You need respect for other disciplines. Feedback might show you where that contempt is hurting your results. It also highlights bad habits.
Bad habits, like procrastination.
Could be. Or like his example of a brilliant planner who just never follows through. The analysis makes that pattern undeniable. You see the great plan then. Nothing happens.
Right. The gap between idea and reality.
Exactly. And then there's something maybe unexpected. Manners.
Manners. Seriously. Like saying please and thank you.
Yes. He calls them the lubricating oil of an organization. Basic civility makes collaboration possible even when people don't naturally like each other.
Lack of manners can derail good work.
Definitely. Even if you're brilliant, if you're rude or dismissive, people won't want to work with you. It hinders everything.
Okay. And finally, feedback analysis helps you see what not to do.
Precisely. It shows you the areas where you have little or no talent, things you should probably just avoid. Stop wasting energy there.
Because trying to get from terrible to just okay takes too much effort.
Way too much. Focus that energy on going from good to great where you have natural ability.
Okay, that's a solid foundation, knowing your strengths. But you mentioned another piece, how you perform. That's different.
Very different and equally important. He says surprisingly few people actually know how they get things done effectively.
Oh, so?
Well, the most fundamental distinction he makes is, are you a reader or a listener?
Reader versus listener. Explain that.
Do you best absorb information by reading written reports, memos, emails before a discussion? Or do you grasp things better by hearing them explained, by discussing them live?
I can see how that matters.
It's huge. Think about meetings. If you're a reader, you want the documents beforehand. If you're a listener, you might prefer a verbal briefing first.
And getting it wrong. Like a listener boss getting dense reports.
Exactly. Or a reader boss getting long verbal rambles. It leads to frustration and poor communication. Drucker used historical examples like Eisenhower, a reader.
Right, who struggled with press conferences.
Compared to Lyndon Johnson, a listener who apparently didn't get much from written briefings but was masterful in person.
And most people can't just switch easily.
Very few can be truly effective both ways, Drucker argues. You need to know your preference and structure your work and how you interact with others around it.
Okay, reader, listener. What else falls under how I perform?
How you learn. This is another big one where we make assumptions.
Like assuming everyone learns the way they did in school.
Precisely.
Right.
But people learn in vastly different ways. Some learn by writing things down.
Like Churchill.
Churchill, yes. He wrote to clarify his own thinking. Others learn by taking copious notes, like Beethoven apparently did.
Did he even look at the notes again?
Maybe not always, but the act of writing itself helped him process and remember. Some learn best by doing, by trying things out.
That makes sense.
Others learn by talking. Drucker mentions a CEO who learned by hearing himself talk, basically thinking aloud to his senior staff for hours.
Wow. That must have been interesting for the staff.
Probably. But the point is, that's how he learned effectively. Knowing your learning style is one thing.
Acting on it is another.
That's the key. You have to actually use that knowledge to structure how you take in information.
Okay. What else? Working with others.
Yes. Do you work well with people, or are you more of a loner? And if you work with people, in what capacity?
What do you mean?
Are you better as a team member? A subordinate taking direction? A coach or mentor? An advisor? Or are you the decision maker?
Different roles require different dynamics.
Totally different. He uses Patton again, great subordinate, maybe not the best supreme commander material, someone amazing as a number 2.
Might fail as the number 1.
Because advising is different from making the final call. You need to know where you fit. And finally, environment matters.
Like stress levels. Big company versus small.
Exactly. Do you thrive under pressure, or do you need structure and predictability? Do you do your best work in a large, established organization or a smaller, more nimble one?
So many factors.
Right. And the core message again is, don't try to fundamentally change who you are in these aspects. Focus on improving how you perform within your natural style and avoid situations where you know you'll struggle.
Okay, strengths, performance.
Yeah.
What's the third pillar?
Values. This is crucial. And it's not just about ethics, though. That's part of it.
Ethics like the mirror test. Can you look yourself in the eye?
That's the baseline, yes. But organizational values are about what the organization believes in and prioritizes. If your values clash fundamentally with the organization's,
You're going to be miserable and ineffective.
almost guaranteed. Think about it. An HR exec who deeply values promoting from within joins a company obsessed with external hires only. That's a major conflict.
Right. Or a scientist passionate about risky breakthroughs at a pharma company focused only on safe, incremental improvements.
Exactly. Or think about short-term results versus long-term investment. That's often a values conflict at its core.
Even between, say, 2 churches.
Drucker gives that example. One church values maximizing new parishioners. Another values deepening the spiritual growth of existing ones. Different values, different measures of success.
So your personal values and the company's values don't have to be identical.
But they need to be compatible enough. You need to be able to respect the organization's values even if they aren't exactly yours. Otherwise, it just won't work.
What if your strengths and values conflict? You're great at something, but you don't believe in it.
That's a really tough spot. Drucker argues values should be the ultimate test. He himself left a successful investment banking job.
Oh, yeah? Why?
Because he felt it didn't align with his core value of, well, valuing people and making a meaningful contribution beyond just money. He found it fulfilling despite the success.
So values trump even strengths in the end.
That's his perspective. They determine whether you can commit yourself to the work.
Okay, so if you figure out your strengths, your performance style, and your values, does that tell you where do I belong?
It gets you a lot closer. Some people know early musicians, doctors, chefs maybe, but for most people, especially talented ones with options.
It takes time. Maybe into your mid-20s, he says.
Yeah, around then you should have enough self-knowledge from reflecting on these areas to start making informed choices. Not just where you do belong, but maybe even more critically, where you don't.
The power of saying no.
Absolutely. Knowing yourself means you can turn down a job that requires constant decision-making if you know you're a better advisor, or avoid a company culture that clashes with your values.
And instead, look for opportunities that fit.
Or even shape opportunities to fit you. When you know your strengths, style, and values, you can propose ways of working or projects that leverage them. That's how outstanding performance happens.
So successful careers aren't perfectly planned out from day one.
Not usually. They develop when people are prepared for opportunities because they've done this work of self-understanding.
Okay. Strengths, performance, values, belonging. Now, what about contribution? What should I contribute?
Right. In the past, your contribution was often just dictated by your job title.
But for knowledge workers today, it's a question we have to ask ourselves.
Exactly. And just doing your own thing, like the old hippie mantra, isn't really a useful guide for making a real difference.
So how do you figure it out?
Drucker suggests 3 elements. First, what does the situation actually require? What needs doing?
Okay, assess the need.
Second, given your unique profile strengths, performance style, values, how can you make the greatest contribution to meet that need?
Play to your strengths within the context.
Exactly. And third, what results need to be achieved to actually make a tangible difference? Be specific.
He gave that hospital administrator example, right?
Yeah. The new administrator saw the whole hospital needed help, but focused on the emergency room. Why? Because it was visible, critical, and improving it would set a standard of excellence quickly.
So focused, achievable, meaningful results.
And visible, measurable. He suggests plans shouldn't look out much more than, say, 18 months. Aim for something challenging but doable in that time frame.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we rarely work completely alone. What about relationships?
Huge. Drucker calls it responsibility for relationships. Your effectiveness depends heavily on how you interact with others.
And the first step is?
Recognizing that other people are individuals too. They have their own strengths, their own ways of performing, their own values.
Sounds obvious, but maybe we forget.
We often do. We assume others work like us. Think back to the reader-listener thing. If your boss is a listener, you need to adapt. Sending long reports like you did for your old reader boss just won't work.
So you have to manage the boss a bit by understanding their style.
Exactly. Observe how they work best, how your key colleagues work best. What are their strengths? What are their values? Don't try to change them. Understand them.
So the first secret is understanding them to leverage their strengths.
Right. And the second secret is taking responsibility for communication.
Because misunderstandings cause friction.
A huge amount of it. Drucker says many personality conflicts are just people not understanding what the other person is doing, or how, or why.
Why is that so common now?
Because work is so specialized. In the past, maybe everyone in a workshop did similar things, where people worked alone. Now you have teams of specialists.
Who might not understand each other's work at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the marketing VP needs to understand what the engineers are up to, and vice versa. It's the specialist's job to make their work understandable to others.
Tell people what you're doing, how you work, what results you expect.
Yes. And what you need from them. It sounds simple, but people often hesitate. They worry about seeming presumptuous or, stupid.
But that fear is usually unfounded.
Totally. Drucker found that when people proactively share this information, here are my strengths, here's how I work best, here are my values, here's what I'm trying to achieve, and ask others the same.
The response is usually positive.
Overwhelmingly positive. People appreciate the clarity. It builds trust. And trust, built on that mutual understanding, is the foundation of any effective modern organization.
So, taking responsibility for relationships isn't just nice, it's a duty.
It's absolutely essential for effectiveness.
Okay, one last big topic, the second half of your life. This feels very relevant today.
Increasingly so. Manual workers often retired when their bodies gave out, but knowledge workers, we might get bored or hit a plateau after 20, 30, 40 years.
But still have decades of potential working life ahead.
Exactly. So managing oneself, Drucker argues, increasingly means planning for and developing a second career or a major second interest.
And he saw a few ways this happens.
Yeah, three main paths. One is starting a completely new career, moving from corporate finance to hospital administration or business exec to minister.
Okay, full switch.
Another is developing a parallel career. You stay in your main job, maybe reduce hours slightly, but take on a significant role elsewhere, often in a nonprofit.
Like running the church finances or serving on the school board.
Exactly. Something that uses your skills but offers different challenges and rewards. The third path is becoming a social entrepreneur.
Starting something new.
Usually. Often people who've been successful in their first career, they still have energy and drive, but want a new kind of impact. They might start a nonprofit while still connected to their original field.
Interesting. And who does this well?
Druckers believe the people who successfully manage the second half will be the leaders and models for the future. But there's a catch.
What's that?
You can't wait until you're 55 or 60 to start thinking about it. You need to begin preparing long before you reach that stage.
Lay the groundwork early, like
Yeah.
in your 30s or 40s.
Ideally, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned predictions that retirees would flock to volunteering often didn't pan out because people hadn't developed those interests earlier. You need to plant the seeds.
He had an example of a lawyer.
Yeah, someone who started volunteering with schools around 35, joined the board at 40, and by 50 was launching his own educational venture, all while still being laid counsel at his firm.
So it gels gradually.
Exactly. And there's another benefit to having a serious second interest.
Which is?
It provides resilience. If you hit a rough patch in your main career or face personal difficulties, having another area where you can contribute, succeed, and find meaning is incredibly valuable.
A sort of psychological safety net.
And more than that, in a society where success is kind of expected, the absence of failure can almost become its own pressure. Having a second area gives you options, another place to lead, be respected, and feel successful.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this all up. Managing oneself, it sounds simple, almost obvious.
But it requires a fundamental shift in thinking, doesn't it? Acting like the CEO of you, Inc.
Yeah. And this shift from people being managed to managing themselves,
Yeah.
it's a massive change for society, too.
Huge. Old assumptions about jobs for life, staying in one place, companies outlasting workers, they just don't hold like they used to.
It really is, as Drucker put it, creating a revolution in human affairs.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Consider all these pieces we've talked about. Strengths, performance, values, belonging, contribution, relationships, even that second half of life. Which one resonates most strongly with you right now? Where do you feel the biggest need for more clarity?
Mm-hmm.
And then just think, what's one small, concrete step you could take, maybe even today or this week, to deepen your understanding in that specific area? Just one small step.